Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon, my video series in which I use tarot spreads to help me explore topics related to living the intentional life. If this is your first time here, welcome, I'm pleased to see you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning, I truly appreciate it. So friends, the tarot spread has been laid, and let's dive right in. As usual, at the end of the video, I will give you the names of the decks and their creators in case you want to go get a copy of your own. So here's the spread. And so, friends, you can see that this week we're looking at unnecessary fear again. And we're going to look at it from a different perspective. But first, I'd like to dive into what fear is. Now, have you ever heard of Dr. Wayne Dyer? You probably have, but in case you were living in a cave, he's one of the most popular teachers of motivation and inspiration from the United States. He passed away in 2015, but he is one of my favorite teachers. And he says that fear is false evidence appearing real. False, F, evidence, E, appearing, A, real, R, fear. False evidence appearing real. And in a sense, of course, he's right. Most of what we think we are afraid of is our assessment of evidence, our incorrect assessment of evidence, or our projection from the evidence into a future that we don't want. And again, I think that is a very valid and appropriate way to understand fear. However, there's another way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that we each, as manifesting human beings, have two perspectives. Now, two perspectives. One perspective is the perspective of our everyday lives, the one that is tired in the morning when we haven't gotten enough sleep, and the one that is cranky when we are cut off on the freeway if you're driving, the one who gets angry at the television when they see something they don't like. Our normal everyday perspective for most of us. And then there's the perspective of our eternal selves, the selves that were here before we came into this body and will continue to be here after we have left these bodies. So we have these two perspectives. The daily perspective, the mundane perspective, the physical perspective, if you will, and the eternal perspective, the spiritual perspective, the non-physical perspective. And it's the difference between these two perspectives that gives us negative emotions. And one of the strongest negative emotions is fear. When the two perspectives are aligned, when we look at something and appreciate something and love something together, we have nothing but positive emotion. When our perspectives do not align, when our eternal perspective is looking at things as, all right, good for us in the eternal, but our temporal perspective is saying, no, that's where the tension creates negative emotions. And one of those emotions is fear. For example, you could be standing on the edge of a cliff and your eternal perspective, your non-physical perspective is saying, wow, look at this view, it's amazing. Your temporal perspective might be thinking, I could fall off, I could die. Those are completely different perspectives. Just being there at the edge of the cliff is not requiring you to fall, is not requiring you to die. And that is what our eternal perspective sees. However, our temporal perspective starts projecting negative outcomes into the future, and there's a tension. And that tension causes negative emotions, one of them being fear. Other emotions as well, such as boredom or distrust or pessimism or hate or the desire for revenge. All of those are negative emotions. And today we're looking at fear. So, fear is a disconnection between the fullest perspective of ourselves and our physically manifesting brains. Yeah? And also we have internal tensions. Yeah? We have tensions between our ego and our shadow self. We have tensions between different sides of us. We can look at the same person and think we love them and be very angry at them and think we feel both of them at the same time. Yeah? We have internal struggles as well. And so today we're going to be looking at some of those internal struggles that also can result in fear. So here is the first section of the spread. There are many ways that our internal divides, our internal struggles can manifest. One way that we're going to look at today is when our personalities are in conflict. Yeah? We all have the daily persona that we show to the world, and we have a shadow self. I'm sure you've heard of that. The self that we hide, the self that we will not accept. And each of our shadow selves and public personas are different. For some people, their shadow self may be another person's public persona. Yeah? One person's angry, grumpy public persona may have a very loving, caring, and frightened shadow self. On the other hand, someone who is very loving and caring to the world will also have a shadow self that may have anger, fear, and frustration at its core. So we all have different aspects of our personalities, and we hide part of them. So let me give you an example. Now, for example, your example may be different, but here's one example, the example that we can see in the spread. On the one side, we can have someone who looks very energetic, who is very energetic, very passionate about what they want to do. Someone who gets an idea and dives right in and wants to start working on something, or wants to start exploring something, or wants to start loving something very energetically. These people can also sometimes seem a little bit hot-headed because of their spontaneous bursts of energy. They might look a little bit impulsive from the outside, yeah? That they're not slowly, carefully planning their course of action. They might seem impulsive. That same person might have a shadow self that is different, that is maybe a little bit cold-hearted, that is a little bit snobby, if you will, yeah? That looks at things as if they're not worthy of me, not worthy of my interest. They might seem a little bit inactive. They might seem like a know-it-all. I don't have to learn anything more. I know it all. I know what's going on. Their shadow self might be like a piece of ice. Yeah? Their public persona might look like a flame, but their shadow self might be cold and a little icy. Another person's might be very loving and caring on the outside. Yeah? The kind of person who wants to help, the kind of person who sees someone uncomfortable even and wants to go in and help that person, solve that person's problem. That person very often will have a shadow self that is insecure, a shadow self that is afraid of needing help themselves, a shadow self that thinks that if they're not helping, that they are worthless. So we all have these dichotomous, these varying aspects of our personality. And that tension can lead to fear. Yeah? So for example, the passionate person who doesn't have something to interest them at the time might start feeling uncomfortable and start feeling unnecessary fear. Yeah? The helpful person who doesn't have anyone to help and doesn't feel like they are needed for periods of time might start feeling fear because of that tension in their personalities. So, what can we do? One thing to do is to connect, to bridge those two sides of our personalities. First, we need to recognize and understand and accept our shadow selves. And then we can bridge the two, connect the two. Connecting our personalities, which is called by Maslow and also Wayne Dyer, individuation. Yeah? Connecting both sides of our personalities, self-actualization, individuation, will help us move past unnecessary fears. So, connecting ourselves, making ourselves whole, is one step. Here's another part of the spread. Another element that might be a reason for fear, unnecessary fear, appearing in our lives is, you might say, our energy level. On the one hand, we might be engaged in competition or conflict. Yeah? Now, some people I know enjoy competition. I'm not one of them. But I understand that some competition can be enjoyable. Yeah? When I'm speaking of competition, I'm talking about the darker side of competition here. Yeah? The competition that is not just stimulating and fun, but is aggressive and anger-filled and not just striving to do your best, but striving to conquer someone else or another group or another system. That kind of competition is not healthy. The competition that is cooperative, is fun, that helps each of us rise to the best of our individual capacities, capabilities, I can see as positive. But the border can be crossed into the desire to defeat, to conquer, to wipe out, that kind of competition. And its compatriot, its partner, conflict, can be a cause for fear. Yeah? We get so competitive, we start getting afraid of losing, afraid of not winning. We can also be afraid of differing opinions. We become afraid because we're afraid that, well, maybe my opinion, my belief, my worldview has no value. So we start fighting for our opinion because other people have other opinions, have other belief systems, have other views of the world. And that's another kind of conflict that can cause fear. On the other hand, on the one hand, conflict and negative competition. On the other hand is stagnation, low energy, insecurities, but not the insecurities that come from struggle, the insecurities from inaction, ennui, if you will. Yeah? That kind of low energy state can also be a cause for fear. We can be afraid that we will never get anything done. On the one hand, we're afraid we're going to lose, we're afraid we're going to be dominated. On the other hand, we're just all by ourselves. We're afraid that we will not become who we want to become, not live the life we want to lead, not succeed in anything at the extreme level. Yeah? And that can be a cause or a source for fear. And it can also be a source of raw emotion. Yeah? Everything can make us sensitive. On the one hand, the struggler, the fighter, can sometimes be so overwhelmed in the struggle that they become insensitive. Yeah? The one who is inactive can become extremely sensitive. Every little thing can cause great fluctuation, insecurity. And both of those states can be the source of fear, unnecessary fear. So, what can we do? The best thing I think we can do is to slow down when we are in competition and to move steadily in the direction we're choosing. Also, when we are inactive, to start moving, but to move slowly and in the direction we're headed towards, yeah? In the direction of our intentions. One of the things that causes the inertia of unmoving is the need to get to the destination quickly. Yeah? We won't take the first step because we know the final step is so far away. We want that final step to be here and now. But that's not the way we intended to live our lives when we started. We didn't intend to come here, be born, and retire from our job the next day. Yeah? Our lives are a journey. The purpose of our lives is a journey of creation and moving with the flow of our intention. And moving out of a state of immobility just means taking the first step and stepping slowly with the flow of our intention. Moving comfortably and slowly out of our area of comfort, our sphere of safety. Because moving out of that sphere of safety is the direction of our intention. I'm not talking about entering into a battle zone when I say out of our out of our zone of safety. What I mean is out of our living rooms, out of our beds. Yeah? Our beds are very safe, but to do anything, to really live the life we want to live, we need to be able to move away from our beds. We need to be able to move out of our living rooms. We need to be able to take a new step outside when it's safe to move outside. Yeah? Remember, we also have restrictions these days. If you're listening, I don't know when you're listening to this, but at the time of this filming, we are still in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. So, with concerns for safety, with remembering the health safety of ourselves and of our communities, still taking the next step out of our personal safety zones, inside of the larger healthful safety zone. Moving like a snail is fine. Now, snails keep moving in the direction that they want to go. And they have some protection with them. They have their secure home, but they're still moving out slowly, out of their safety zone into the flow of their intention. And we can do that too. Here's the next section of the spread. And so, friends, in this section, you can see the person biting themselves, biting their hands in fear, in mental anguish, in worries, in anxiety. And that might be a way to look at unnecessary fear. This person has just woken up from perhaps a bad dream and is wrought with anxiety, or is carrying their anxieties from their day into their bed and is unable to sleep. They're safe in their beds, but still they are hurting themselves with their thoughts, and that is expressed by the person biting their own hands. That is an expression of unnecessary fear. And it's self-inflicted. So unnecessary fear is, in other words, self-inflicted wounds. And what do we need to do? What do we want to do to move past that? To be able to shed those unnecessary fears? Well, you can see one way is to connect, and one way is to move forward. But in everything, it's to find balance, to find our equilibrium. Like two scales. If the scales are out of whack, out of balance, that's when we start to feel that unnecessary fear. When the scales are back in balance, when we are in alignment with our eternal, our immortal, our non-physical selves, when we are in alignment, when we are in balance, those unnecessary fears will disappear. What we want to do is find that sweet spot, that place of balance between the light and the dark. We want the dark. We do want the dark. The dark side of our personality is part of us. We don't want to eliminate it. We want to accept it and integrate it. We want to stand in that center place between light and dark, between hope and the shadows, between the sun and the moon. And in that balanced place, that sweet spot, is where we will come into our own. And when we've come into our own, we will be flowing so freely with the power of our intention, with the stream, with the river of our intention. Now, the current of our intention is so strong if we will allow it to flow. And our worries and fears block that. And a lot of our worries and fears are unnecessary. So, to eliminate them, we want to integrate, connect all aspects of ourselves. We want to move away from negative competition and not get into the inertia of immobility, but move slowly and steadily in the direction with the flow of our intention and find that balance. Friends, have you ever experienced any of those times when you were either overwrought with conflict and lost perspective and felt fearful? Have you been so inert that you were afraid that you would not be able to take the next step? Have you been so overwhelmed with fear that you either didn't want to get out of bed or didn't want to get into bed because you know you couldn't sleep? Have you experienced any of those times? If you have, tell me, and let's talk about it. Leave comments below. I would love to hear from you. And we can interact down there too. Also, remember to like and share if you feel called to. I'd love to see these videos get into the hands of people who might benefit from them. Subscribe if you feel called to, so you can get notifications of when I upload videos. And friends, as always, I will show you the spread in just a moment. And as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and clear awareness. Thank you.